Hello, this is Dr. Marty Klein with another video quickie. Today I want to talk about my favorite Italian expression. Now, increasingly, we live in a world of powerlessness. Climate change, inflation, spiraling teenage depression, confusing reports about COVID, democracy undermined from a dozen directions. It's a terrifying world out there. Yeah, and a lot of us feel powerless. And that seems to be my patient's relationship experience too. They're afraid to ask their mate for what they want. They're afraid to say no. They can't occasionally ask their partner, please just do this thing for me because I'd really appreciate it. They're too busy to keep their promises. And if they don't make promises, that creates conflict too. Yes, we feel powerless. My patients especially feel powerless around sexuality, afraid to ask for change, feeling forced to hide their fantasies, lying about porn and masturbation, faking desire, faking orgasm, and quite silent in between. This is what I call surplus powerlessness. It's quite unnecessary, unlike, say, how we feel watching the war in Ukraine or hearing about anti-gay legislation rolling across the country. My patients are continually telling me what isn't possible regarding their sexual expression. They're sure that they're going to be rejected. Their relationship will become unstable. They'll find out they're not who they thought they were. God will hate them. They'll slide down a slippery slope. While I'm sympathetic about their anxiety, I generally challenge these narratives. Most of the judgments that we fear from others, like, she'll think I'm a pervert, we actually fear from ourselves. Most of our fear about failing sexually is about arbitrary standards that we could actually interrupt with impunity. And limiting sex to what's dignified or manly or feminist or anti-racist, life's just way too short to squeeze our sex lives into arbitrary categories like these, especially since the importance of these categories and the meaning of these categories changes periodically with the times. In reality, the chance to take psychological risks is one of the greatest gifts that sex has to offer. Sure, the sensory delight, the intimacy, even the orgasm, if it's part of things, those are great. But what's also great, maybe greater, is the experience of freedom, of having so many choices in bed, and, assuming birth control is covered one way or another, the luxury that for a few minutes, nothing matters. Where else can you go in life where nothing matters? Perhaps only on the floor playing Legos with a 4-year-old. Now, my patients who are engineers, they call this cherished state optionality, the situation of having choices, even more choices than you can actually use. For people who feel constrained all day, all week long, because of jobs, kids, in-laws, money problems, health issues, or other externals, the experience of optionality is a radical one. It contradicts everyday life. And in that sense, sexuality can be revolutionary. It can be the way that ordinary people can experience their own power, breaking norms, violating taboos, and challenging old narratives, and getting away with it. That's revolutionary, which George Orwell portrayed in his novel 1984. Most totalitarian governments understand that, and thus they discourage or forbid sexual autonomy. That's certainly true of almost all organized religions. They do not want anyone experiencing sexual autonomy. Even in the US today, conservatives continually pass laws limiting products, procedures, and behaviors that make sex safer, easier, or more enjoyable. Many of my patients yearn for sex to be easier, less wrapped around conflict, anxiety, disappointment, and emotional isolation. They'd like to have a bit more pleasure with it too. I'm much more ambitious for them. I'd like to bring them to a place of sexual relaxation, playfulness, lack of self-consciousness, and yes, optionality. A place where everything is just fine no matter what happens. A revolutionary place. The Italians have a wonderful saying about how sex is an opportunity for even the most ordinary person to experience their own grandeur, their own power, and the beauty of self-expression. Il sesso è l'opera di arte del povero. Sex is the peasant's opera. If you feel inhibited or self-conscious, I hope this encourages you to sing your song just a little bit more. I'm Dr. Marty Klein. Thanks for joining me. Oh, and by the way, I publish one of these video quickies every few weeks. If you want to get notified about it, just click the subscribe button that you see at the bottom of your screen. Thanks for joining me.